Hey folks, welcome back to the Wikipedia world, and I am Abhinay Gupta. And today again we are continuing with the chapter Audit and Auditor. Right? So guys, we have come to an end of this chapter. We have already covered a lot of sections in this chapter, right? That is relating to the audit and the auditor. Right? But today the sections that we are taking up are some new sections, right, that are applicable after the 1st of April. Right? So the first section that we take over today for this lecture would be section 144 from the Companies Act 2013, which deals with auditor not to render certain services. So if you, chartered accountant, firm, practice, separate, right? If you have been appointed as an auditor in a company, right, then you have to make sure that there are certain specified services that you don't provide, right? Now, why? Why shouldn't we provide those services? We'll see when we discuss each of the services. We'll not go into very detail of it, right? What you need to understand are, yes, these are the certain number of services that you cannot take ahead, right? The first thing that you need to understand, right, about the prohibited service, that if there are certain service prohibited, right, then see, for example, what happens is when an auditor gets appointed, in most of the cases it is appointed by the members in the general meeting, right? There are specific cases when the CAG and the directors, they also appoint the auditor. So whatever be the case, once the auditor is appointed, what do you think? Are the members directing the auditor or the directors? Yes, there's one more name, the audit committee, right? So when an auditor is appointed under the act, right, he should provide for the company only such services which has been agreed upon amongst the auditor and the board of directors or the audit committee wherever it is applicable. Right? So if the company has an audit committee, it will. Otherwise, the board of directors, they will sit and decide what are the kinds of functions or what is it that the board of directors require from the auditor. Right? So these are certain services. We need you to perform this, this, and this, and give your comments and your observations on so and so as well. So it has to be decided in the beginning, right? That this is the only limitation. Now suppose there are cases of joint audits and other things also, right? So over there also there has to be a distinction. Who is doing what and not. Everything has to be communicated. Everything has to be documented. Right? So similarly over here also, whatever the auditor goes on to do, it has been discussed, it has been documented, and it has been decided upon. Right? But there are such services which shall not include the services that the auditor is providing shall not include certain services, right? And that is what section 144 goes ahead to restrict. So what are those services if we understand? So the first service I would say is accounting and the bookkeeping service. The major thing that you understand an auditor cannot do. A chartered accountant, yes. A firm, yes. But an auditor, no. Right? So understand, being an auditor is a capacity that you get. So as an individual or as a chartered accountant capacity, you can go ahead with providing such services. But once you have been appointed as an auditor, right, there are certain services which have been prohibited for you. Right? So accounting and bookkeeping. Why? Because suppose I am responsible for all the accounting and all the bookkeeping of XYZ Limited. I have done everything. Right? Now they appoint me as auditor. What do you think am I gonna check? That's my account, right? I know what have I done over there. Right? I know everything out of it. But what we need to understand is what is my role over there. What am I supposed to do? Nothing. It's my account. So there is a conflict of interest. How can I say I have done a mistake? I cannot say that. And I will not do that mistake. And if it is done, I will not highlight it. Right? So checker and maker has to be different. So it's a very logical sense why an accounting or a bookkeeping service cannot be provided by an auditor. Right? The second, internal audit. I am the statutory audit. I am the internal audit. Everything is being seen by me. It's a risk. Now, what do you think is the function of an internal auditor? So internal auditor is with the company throughout the year. So like there are professionals who maintain the account. There are internal auditors who also see the checks and filters and the controls and whether everything is happening properly or not. They go ahead along with the directions given by the company. And a statutory auditor is an independent person coming to assess what has happened. Right? Auditing is a big term. It's an inspection that is doing. So if you are an internal auditor, throughout the year you are with them, you are working according to the company, how can now you be a statutory auditor again? It is very much close to the concept of keeping the book and the stuff, right? So you cannot be in both these capacity at the same time, right? Then if we talk about design and implementation of any financial information system, FIS, right? So what is an information system? Information system, that is IT, right? So you have prepared a financial information system. You design it as to how will the financial information go to the top management, right? How is it gonna be implemented? So you are checking the controls, you are building up the tool, you are building up the design and everything, and then you come for checking it. So no white box, black box approach. You check the entire thing. You know what you have performed. What are you going to check over there? You cannot, right? So it's again the similar reason why we cannot take ahead the service. Actuarial service. Statutory dues, right? Gratuity, PF, all these things, who calculate them? It is calculated by an actuary, right? So a CA relies upon a certificate given by the actuary. See, you cannot go ahead by saying that, okay, this are the gratuity. I have assessed this should be the gratuity, this is paid and that is okay. No, you cannot decide that. Let somebody decide what is the gratuity. You have to check the compliance. Okay? Investment advisory services. Do you think you are going to advise the company what to invest, what not to? You cannot do that. You are a statutory auditor. You need to check. You need to inspect. Right? Inspection investigation is what you are supposed to do with the financials of the company. You cannot go ahead and decide, okay, let's do this. Put your investments over here, block your investments over here. Let's do this. Let's take up this loan. Let's take up. You cannot do that because that is what you are checking, whether the company is performing it right or wrong. Right? Investment banking services, you cannot provide it to them. How will you check? How will you reconcile the bank? Cash flows and the banks, cash and bank, right? These loans, for loans, FDs, all these things. These are some major concerns for an audit. Then how can you be an investment banker for them? You cannot, right? Rendering of outsourced financial service. It's again the financial service. Cannot give it. Management service. Can you manage? Because they're checking the management. You are checking the controls of the management, the internal control of the management, right? So how can you be the management? I manage and I check myself. Possible? No. Right? And finally they say it's any other kind of service as may be prescribed. That means leaving an open-ended space for anything to peep in. Right? So we'll provide the services approved by the BOD and the audit committee only, but these cannot even be approved by them. These are prohibited. Right? They shall not provide any specifically prohibited service discussed. Next is, will discontinue existing non-audit services. Now there is a transition period, understand? So as you know that this section was not earlier applicable, but now there is a new section coming up in the Companies Act 2013. So there has to be a transition period. Today I launch it and today I close everything, not possible, right? Who will manage it? Right? So once this comes into place, right, then the company and the auditor, they are required to comply with the provision of the section 144, right, about not rendering certain services before the closure of the first financial year after the date of such commencement. So when was it commenced? 1st April 2014. So when we talk about before the closure of the financial year after the date of commencement, commenced on 1/4/2014, you should stop rendering certain services by 31st March 2015. These days have already passed, right? So we are not supposed to get too much in detail about it because it is already done. So transition stuff is completed. It will not happen again because now you cannot render those services. If you are rendering, you are at fault, right? You'll be penalized, right? Now, what do you mean by directly, indirectly? See, now when we talk about directly, indirectly, there are two situations. If you're an individual, via whom can you get the services done indirectly? And if you're a firm, then via whom can you get these services done indirectly are two separate things. Right? So let us see. So in the case of an individual, right? So in the case of auditor being an individual, either himself or through his relative or any other person who is connected or associated with such individual or through any other entity whatsoever in which such individual has significant influence or control, or whose name or trademark or brand is used by such individual. So I have jotted on the points over here. Either he himself cannot do it, cannot ask his relative to do it, any associated person cannot do it, person who is associated or connected to this individual, right? Other entities cannot, right? When we talk about other entities, then nobody. If you are managing any other entity, cannot, right? Which entity specifically? If I say managing means you have significant control, that is when you manage, right? If you have significant influence or significant control, you cannot. And if you're sharing the same brand or trade name like KPMG, BSR Associates, BSR Ampersand Company, whatever inside, right? You have different firms. So you cannot again. So in the individual capacity, they have related you to these things. You, your relative, any associated person, entity where you have control, and the same trademark brand name things, right? So that the statement that I said initially is exactly the words of the law, Bare Act, that in case of auditor being an individual, either himself or through his relative or any other person connected or associated with such individual, or through any other entity whatsoever in which such individual has significant influence or control, or whose name or trademark or brand is used by such individual. Got it? When we talk about such individual, that individual is the auditor himself. Okay. Next, if we talk about firm, so firm itself, so its partners who are the partner in the same firm. Then the parent company, parent firm, or the subsidiary firm, any other entity where they have significant control, or where they use the common brand or trade name. So in the individual case, when I took the example of KPMG, it was a wrong example, right? That example will actually suit well in the case of a firm. So again, if I go ahead to narrate the entire Bare Act for you, it is that in the case of an auditor being a firm, either itself or through any other partners, or through its parent, subsidiary or associate entity, or through any other entity whatsoever in which the firm or any partner of the firm has significant influence or control, or whose name or trademark or brand name is used by the firm or any of the partners. So only thing you need to remember that in the case of individual, when we are connecting them only to that individual. But in the case of a firm, when we are connecting them not only with the firm but also with any of the partners of the firm. Getting it? Things clear? Right? So that is about this section. You know the transaction period, you know all of these. The next section that we pick up today itself is section 145. Auditor to sign the audit report. Right? Even this is a new section 145 of the Companies Act of 2013. Right? Again, this came into force on the 1st of April 2014. So only auditor can sign the report and other documents. Right? So when we say auditor, means the person who has been appointed as the auditor of the company, right? So that auditor is authorized to sign the reports or sign or certify any other document of the company which are in accordance with the section 2 of section 141, where we also include the LLP. Right? So where the LLP comes into place, no body corporate is allowed. If you remember, if LLP comes into place, in that LLP, only the chartered accountants who are partners are allowed to sign. Right? So auditors who are appointed, they'll sign not only audit report but also such document which are accompanied over there. All of it will only be signed by the auditor. Right? So qualification to be read in the general meeting and will be open to inspection thereof by the members. So whatever is the qualification means it's not the qualification of the auditor, whether it's a chartered accountant, whether it is whether it's that. No. Qualification is the qualification that you have made to the audit report, right? So there are certain qualifications that you make to the audit report. So those qualifications will be read out in the general meeting. That these are the qualifications, these are the observations on certain matters, these are the comments on certain specific assertions, right, on the financial transaction or any financial matter, right, but only those which are major, which have an adverse effect on the functioning of a company, right, it will be read out in the general meeting. Got the point? Because what happens, what is the purpose of your audit report? Just to scrutinize and analyze the financial statement and to make sure that things are working properly. If it is not, you pass a qualification that okay, this thing has this issue. Specific. Rest things apart from these are okay. So all your qualifications, all your observations and all your comments, that means the auditor's comments, right, will have to be there in the report. Next section. Auditor to attend general meeting. Yes, section 146 of the Companies Act 2013. Again, this is a new section which got applicable on the 1st of April 2014, right, which provides that the auditor should attend the general meeting, right. When we say the auditor has right to receive notice of general meeting, so any notice or any other document which is relating to the general meeting, right, it shall be forwarded to the auditor of the company. It is not that okay, with the notice, all those things which are going, we also give a notice to the auditor, please come and attend. No. What you have to make sure that any document which is relating to the general meeting or any document which is attached to the notice or the entire notice will also be sent separately to the auditor, that these are the things which are to be discussed. This is the notice I have given. These are the documents relevant that will be there in the general meeting, that will be presented, that will be looked upon. So please have a look, get an understanding and be prepared to talk. Right. It's the duty of auditor to attend general meeting. Yes, it is. Right. So the auditor shall come and attend the general meeting always. But if there is a situation where the auditor is not able to come, right, himself, then he will authorize a representative who will come and sit and attend the general meeting and also take ahead the various procedures and the various parts that the auditor was supposed to play. But otherwise, there can be situations where the company has exempted the auditor from attending the general meeting. Okay, otherwise, if the company did not exempt the auditor has to be present either individually or through a representative. The last thing, right of auditor to be heard at general meeting. Right? So the auditor has the right to be heard at the meeting or any part of the business which concerns him as an auditor. Right? So anything which is out of his purview, which is out of his bandwidth, he's not supposed to interfere. But anything that relates or that connects to that auditor, that refers to the auditor, right, that is concerned to the auditor has a right to be heard in front of all the members in the general meeting. Got the point? So now we have just two more sections left, section 147 and 148, very small sections, right, but still we'll pick them up in the next lecture. When I say very small, doesn't mean so small. Right, 148 is going to be stretched a little bit. So we'll see, most probably we'll wind it up, the entire lecture in the next, entire class, chapter in the next lecture. Otherwise, if needed, maybe I extend the lecture or we have another small lecture, the third one. Right? So see you guys back in the next lecture. Until then, this is Abhinay Gupta signing off. Thank you and bye-bye. Take care.